Hey everyone, it's Cathy with the Meehan Mission Podcast. And today we are joined by two legendary professional athletes. And I'm going to have to read this so I don't mess it up, okay? We have John Stockton, the former player for the Utah Jazz, NBA Hall of Famer, and all-time assist leader, and one of the most respected point guards in basketball history. We also have Mr. Ken Ruettgers. He's a former Green Bay Packers offensive lineman superstar and Super Bowl champion. So these two heroes have joined forces to speak out against medical freedom and health, and they actually have their own podcast called The Ultimate Assist. Now, these guys have been outspoken, and we're going to figure out why did they decide to go from sports to advocates, and what can we do to help them along the way. So welcome to the show, John Stockton and Ken Ruettgers. Hello, everyone. It's Cathy Meehan with the Meehan Mission Podcast. And like I promised, I have two of the coolest guys in sports, John Stockton and Ken Ruettgers. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. It was such a privilege meeting you all and really getting to know you and your fight in the whole medical freedom arena, which, since COVID came along, a lot of us have really started speaking out and speaking up. So what I know my audience wants to know is how in the world are professional athletes now turning into advocates for medical freedom? So I don't know who wants to go first. If you guys want to pick, be competitive on who goes first and just really kind of give us an inside scoop on maybe what personal experience or how in the world did you get from sports to advocating?
Go ahead, John.
I'll go first. Mine's a little bit longer anyway. Mine goes back to when I first started playing with the Jazz. I ran into a chiropractor named Craig Bueller who fixed things without medicine, without surgery, without modalities, and really prolonged and preserved my career. And he gained my trust over time, and he started suggesting, hey, maybe don't do vaccines. And I denied that. We vaccinated our children early on by schedule until we had some injuries. Nothing serious, nothing that's been prolonged like a lot of these people have had to deal with, but certainly eye-openers, and really forced me into a life of reading, seeking out more information, being prepared for the next vaccine, and learning about these things as they came along. And as you know, so many of them are unnecessary. So many of them are dangerous, if not all of them. And so here we move forward. My father, he went into sepsis 3 straight years within 1 or 2 days of getting this flu shot. Elderly, you're supposed to get your flu shot. So I had enough things telling me, hey, there's something wrong with these shots. Don't do any more shots. And I had made that decision for me and my family, my wife and I had. And then COVID comes along, fully prepared for it. You could see everything. You could see the writing on the wall. You could see the playbook. You could see they were going to jam this down our throat. Nobody could have guessed the level in which they did it. But we saw it coming. And then, of course, I get to see my grandkids who have no danger of this disease at all. Trying to force them into shots, even at private schools, force them into masks, disinfectants everywhere. You just saw, and then the loss of freedom that you're not going to be able to fly. Your kids can't go to school. We can't work. Churches are closed. It just really forced my hand. I couldn't stay quiet and just say, hey, nice job learning, John. It's good for your family. I felt like it was time where it absolutely had to be said out loud. And I guess the final thing, I know I'm talking too much, was I would refuse to wear a mask at my alma mater's basketball games. And this kind of brought it to a head. I was removed of my long-standing season tickets because I refused to wear a mask. And that forced me to respond to media requests, et cetera, and really set this on a long thing. And then I met Ken, but it's his turn.
Okay, we'll come back.
That's a long one. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Ken, what got you started?
Well, COVID hit, and of course, everybody, the flavor of what we were going through in our society was if you get COVID, kind of people believe if you get COVID, you will die.
Mm.
I mean, it wasn't said that directly, but man, you ask people, put themselves back in that mindset. And so my wife was, doing some work, as a therapist, and she was working on her hours to get, licensed. And so the place she was working at put a lot of pressure on her to get the COVID shot. And of course, it's safe, it's effective, it's been tested, it's been trialed. I mean, we had, fairly good trust in our medical institutions and somewhat within government, but, with all the people saying safe and effective, and the pressure. And I was, we both had a check on our gut about it, but she went ahead and took the Moderna shot, the COVID shot, and had a neurological reaction.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And fortunately, she found a group of women, and that was in early 21, in January of 2021. So that was right when it first came out. And she had done the research. She had looked online and tried to find, any kind of anomalies with that, and couldn't find anything. And so that started a journey of through censorship, cancel culture, more pharmaceutical lies, more government lies and misdirection. And then I started getting involved with her group because they had some Facebook groups canceled through social media, with a lot of pressure put on by our government, our federal government. And I started asking for help with, and couldn't get any media help, couldn't get any political help. And I reached out to Senator Ron Johnson, who was kind of in that space, in that wheelhouse. And he really pushed that ball forward and got them a press conference in June of 21. And I had started a website for them, and they were so fearful of being canceled. And so started speaking out. And I think as athletes, we're careful about what we put in our bodies, because our bodies are what, help us with our performance. That's where we make our money, and
Right.
and our starting jobs and performance is on our bodies. And so I was always pretty careful about what I put in my body. And, we'd have annual flu shots. I know John in NBA, they do the same thing. And I was like, well, I just don't feel, unless there's like a huge need, I'm okay without intervention. I rely kind of on my body as being pretty good about needing what it needs. And if not, then of course, there are some good things, but, that sometimes you have to trust on, surgeries and medicine and stuff. But by and large, I always kind of believe that, our bodies are pretty amazing things. And then through Senator Johnson, John and I met.
Oh, so that's how you guys met. Yeah, Senator Johnson has been a trooper and definitely outspoken and done such a great job just making that awareness. But it sounds to me kind of like, so John, you kind of had seeds planted about, maybe vaccinations aren't the way to go, and you had that. And then Ken, it sounds like to me you relied more on media and didn't really have anybody planting those seeds of, ever saying, have you ever seen what's in a vaccine? And same, you talked about the annual flu vaccine. So did they make that mandatory for athletes, or was it just it's offered?
It's offered, but it's kind of the norm. Oh, hey, have you gone in to get your flu? And it's easy to do because you just walk into the training room and they pop it in
and they do it.
Make it really easy for you to do. Mm-hmm. But I've just always kind of been like, yeah, I've had the flu before. I survived and I'm fine. If I don't need it, then I'm good without it. But I think for my wife, there was a lot of pressure because she would lose her hours and lose her.
Right.
Yeah. Lose months, if not a couple years.
First 5 years of my career, I did take the flu shot. And and I always got sick about a week after. I was never terrible. And they said, well, that's just part of it. You get sick a little so you don't get it. Again, looking at it now, I wonder, what was I thinking? But at the time, I'm saying, hey, look, we're strong. We can handle anything. Let's go. I just want to play. And then I spent a couple days in a Charlotte hospital, having gotten sick that year. I'm not saying because of the shot, but it sure didn't help me not get it. And so that was the end of that. Again, for me, I needed to be hit across the head a few times before I finally started believing my chiropractor, who told me not to do any of them.
Yeah. Well, I always think that as long as we can have at least people planting seeds,
Yeah.
then that allows the other people to either go down that road and start investigating and finding out. And so just recently, the Cleveland Clinic actually did a study on the flu vaccine, which showed that it's negative efficacy and that people are actually getting sicker after taking the vaccine, because it basically, it impacts your immune system. So you're just more susceptible to another virus, and goes along with this censorship, because, I've been in this arena for about 10 years, and we've been telling everybody, don't get the flu shot. Don't get the flu shot, because, it's not as good as they kind of tell you that it is. So, but it's just really interesting, again, how it's what we're hearing from, whether it's our coworkers or what we see on the media or a chiropractor. So Ken, I want to go back to you. Did you ever do like chiropractic or natural therapy or anything on your journey as far as healthcare goes? Because I'm just kind of trying to figure out, I did not grow up with a chiropractor, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I even knew to go to a chiropractor.
Yeah, I've done some chiropractic, and right. In fact, just this morning went and saw the chiropractor before we jumped on here for this interview. Yeah, and then I also work with the physical therapist that does what they call strain counter strain.
Okay.
So yeah, it's maybe acupressure might be for the lay person's perspective, understanding kind of. And it's really just amazing how the body works. I mean, and this guy goes see that does strain counter strain. He'll start like, okay, let's see, and he'll feel something. I go, ow, that hurts. He goes, oh, that's now you came in for a rib, but that's like your quad. I go, yeah, it's the most, but it just shows you how amazing the body is, and
really
how
is.
everything's connected. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's just so much that we don't know. And also, I've talked before about in med schools that we really need to get these doctors to start investigating and learning some of these alternative therapies, because, we just get our body is made so well. I mean, God made it perfectly. If we just can give it eliminate some of the environmental toxins and the food chemicals and all those things. But I love the fact that people are reaching out and branching into other therapies and just really kind of finding that. So I do have a question. When you guys John, you weren't going to wear a mask. What did people like your family, your past teammates, I mean, did they think you were crazy? And then Ken, I want to know, when he's done, what was your concept of, whether to wear a mask or not?
I had quite a mix. Mostly what I had was people tapping me on the shin, including on one of the ushers the day that he came all the way down to me and says, you had to put your mask on. And they pulled this down and said, I agree with you though.
Oh.
And put his mask. He just had a job to do. And so mostly I got people saying, thank you so much for standing up. We know this is wrong. We just don't feel like we have a voice, or we don't feel like we have the I don't know what the word would be, the clout to try that sort of thing. But yeah, there was some friendships that were severely tested. Even the levels of the school where they went up and they said, hey, John's lost his marbles. And that's hard to take from people that you've known for a long time, that you've had conversations with, and you sit there and you lay it out. You lay out the facts, and as we see them, of course, there's facts on the other side. But I wouldn't get lost their marbles out of any of those things. And it's kind of been distressing. I do think it's coming around now. People, there's too many facts out there that it's agreed on by both sides, that it's tough to really argue it anymore. But boy, there were some serious strains for sure.
So did anybody apologize, or did they give you your season tickets back, or what happened? Or they just like,
that was never that was never overly a negative experience.
Hmm.
They're friends of mine down there at that office. They just said, look,
Yeah.
I'm getting the message. I'm just doing my job. We got to
Hmm.
take your tickets away. I said, well, that's the way it goes. I'm not wearing a
Hmm.
mask. So I guess that's where, but it was friendly. And
Right.
so, the initial rush of it ends. By the way, they were also enforcing testing before coming to the game or proving you had a shot. So there's more than just the mask, but it
Mm-hmm.
was all kind of in one package. And so when it kind of cooled down, they said you can have your tickets back, and I said, not so fast. There's your eyes are suddenly open to the things that they have committed themselves to, and as you mentioned, without apology, and I don't need one, but I think when you force your students to have an education at your school, to take an illegal force, by the way, take a poisonous shot in order to attend your school, I think you owe somebody an apology at minimum. And it's a Catholic school. Gonzaga's a Catholic school, and they're big on forgiveness, but you always have to admit guilt first. You have to say, yeah, look, I did it. I'm sorry. And then God forgives everything. So,
Right.
to not follow those guidelines is a little bothersome for me. It's
Mhm.
from more than it's kind of a spiritual level, actually.
Right, right. And I just, as briefly as I've known you, I don't see you as the type of person that would hold a grudge anyway, and so that you would, I mean, I don't know, maybe you do, but I feel like you wouldn't hold that against them, and just understanding that, you know,
No,
it
I don't think I'm holding a grudge, and it may be
yeah,
taken that way. How people perceive things is up to them. But at the end of the day, I just think that there's certain things that are not okay. And there's
right.
other places where I can spend my money. There's other games I can watch. There's
Hmm.
other everything. And I'm not saying, look, to get me back, you're going to have to do this.
Hmm.
But in essence, that's true. I'll go elsewhere. I'm very happy going to watch a pure basketball game, younger kids going out there and competing without masks where they're not being forced to do stuff.
Yeah.
But we have a right to do with our money what we choose, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's so important. We vote with our dollars. We
Yeah.
vote with our dollars. So, Ken, I want to ask you about masks. And you guys probably don't know, but my husband was pretty big around speaking out on the actual ill effects of wearing masks. And he did a collaboration of all the studies showing, why we shouldn't be masking and all that. So it was always important or interesting for me to find out, if people were just wearing the mask to go along and not cause problems, or, in the beginning, since you were getting some of your info from media and stuff, what were your thoughts on when they said everybody has to wear a mask?
Yeah, I was skeptical
Hmm.
about the benefits compared to the detriments. Although, it's interesting because, there were some areas like I had a doctor's appointment. If I wanted to go see the doctor, I had to wear a mask. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I did. I wore a mask because I needed to do that. I was coaching football, and I think what this whole journey did was, and we all know it exposed the fraud and the lies that we've been
Right.
fed for decades, and that great awakening that happened during COVID, because it was revealed what a fraudulent lie that it all was, right? So coaching, so I put in for, in Oregon, I live in Oregon, I put in for a religious exemption, both at my work, because I was teaching at a community college, and as a football coach. And I got both exemptions. At my job at teaching, they required, if you're not, and I was sending the president of the college, I was sending her things like the Cleveland Clinic, where it was showing negative efficacy with every single additional shot and booster. I
Yeah.
was sending them, I was sending them the data, and at the time, most of the studies were like Germany, Japan, other countries, Israel, and of course, uh, yeah, it just basically played out on deaf ears. But I was then required to get weekly testing, and I'm refused. And I said, you know what? Hey, if this is going to cost me my job, so be it. I'm not going to, And every week I get an email reminder saying you are out of compliance, and I'm like, after a few weeks, I'm like, hey, whatever. you
It's
know,
like a badge
and they
almost,
just,
right?
yeah, and they just ignored it, which just goes to show you that I'm not even sure they had legal standing to do that anyway. I think when it came
Yeah.
down to it. Um, but coaching football, I mean, again, the ridiculousness of, you know, and yet we believed, you know, to some degree because we're so used to trusting in our government and our media, you know, like if we give you a shot in the arm, it stays in the arm. And it's like, that just doesn't make any sense that you put something in your body, it's going to stay there.
Yeah.
And yet here we, you know, and so many people, and I think hopefully we remember the lessons. Hopefully we learn and remember those lessons we learned during COVID. But, you know, making football players, you know, 40 yards from anybody else on the football field, wear a mask under a helmet and think that's going to
Outdoors.
ridiculous. Outdoors. And of course, there were a couple local teams that showed up without masks, and the refs forfeited their game. You know, and I think we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing a lot of courage come out of COVID, not only in the medical area, but in the transgender in sports area. You know, where we've seen teams that have and ladies that are competing forfeit their matches because they don't want to compete against a biological male. And
Right.
so, yeah,
Yeah. Which why I've always thought, well, then why don't, the NCAA, and you guys, the sports people, not me, they created women's collegiate sports, right? And so why not, if they want, create a trans league? That's fine.
yeah,
Let them go compete with one another. That's perfectly fine. But if my daughter was playing some type of a sport and there was a transgender in it, I would definitely forfeit that whole thing because that is just not equal grounds at all. Not equal grounds at all. But so the question is, how did you guys get into podcasting? How did that idea come about? I mean, were y'all just hanging out one day and said, let's do a podcast? Or did somebody approach you? What was it?
Well, we kind of went into it kicking and screaming a little bit.
Yeah.
We had started a group called Voices for Medical Freedom, which Ken and I had started together along with Mike Fisher, who is a tremendous hockey player for the Predators, right?
yeah, yeah,
Nashville Predators. Anyway, we have these meetings every week, and we were trying to share what we were learning with athletes. We wanted athletes, because we know what voices they have if they choose to use them. And we're sitting there having these meetings every week, and it's 5 people, it's 6 people, it's 4 people. We're not really gaining any traction from the stepping out into it portion. We were getting plenty of people calling. We were gaining some nice conversations with folks, but we weren't getting any growth. And I think it was old coach finally said, hey, look, you two guys better just go do a podcast. Well, no, that's a lot. We're not doing that. So, finally, we figured like if we're going to accomplish anything with this and get what we think is the correct word out, we're going to have to start talking and find a way to get it out there. And that's where we came about it.
No, you guys seem like you're naturals.
I don't know.
all those sports interviews and sound bites that decades.
Exactly. Yeah. I always say it's like God puts these things in our past to prepare us for our future. So who knew all of those sports interviews would lead to this?
Well, if you track any of my sports interviews, Cathy, I mean, I tried to give one word answers almost because the questions were a little silly sometimes.
Yeah.
So I would just go, yes,
Yes.
no. And so I wasn't the greatest interview in the world. So it doesn't look like it's a great fit, but hopefully I'm a little chattier on this and Ken and I make a good pair. So
No, I think you guys make. So tell me, are you in you're in two separate states, right? Okay. So, that's the beauty of technology, right? Literally, we're in 3 separate states and we can all communicate and get the reach out. So as far as like getting other people to speak up, I've always said that courage is courageous. Contagious. Thank you.
Contagious, yeah.
Courage is contagious. I was like, that didn't come out of my mouth right.
Well,
But
along those lines, Kathy, Ash did a study on group conformity. And one of his variants on his study, which was basically about peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
Is that when is they, when they had like the four or five people saying, I think it's, I think the line that matches that line, it's the three lines, and you're going to match the
Mm.
one line. And they're saying, I think it's line A, I think it's line, and the test subject is like the fourth or fifth one down the line. And they're like, do I believe what I'm seeing, or do I believe what they're seeing, or should I just go along to get along? And then one of the variants, they put a person before the test subject that would go against the group conformity, the wrong answers. And it gave that test subject the courage to stand up and give what he
Mm.
thought was the right answer, that he wasn't as influenced and compelled to go along. So
Right.
Zimbardo, who did the Stanford prison study,
Hmm.
one of the things he did was what's called the Heroic Imagination Project. Is he took that data and that scientific research out to high schools and colleges and encouraged people. The data is there that says if you will stand up, you will quickly have a compatriot and somebody that will come, and pretty soon, because those people are scared until somebody else speaks up. So, and John and I have talked about, don't self-censor. If you self-censor, they win. And they don't have to do anything because you're doing the work for them. So don't self-censor. And Matthias Desmet, who was the guy that did the big group conformity coming out of mass formation.
Yes.
Yeah, the guy that did he's coming out with a new book, but his solution is with grace and respect, speak, don't be afraid to speak your truth. And when we can do that as a collective in mass, that far outweighs the liars that have the power to try to dissuade. So keep speaking out, don't self-censor, and other people will join you.
Oh, that's great. That's great information. So also now you guys you're a whole different league when you are a professional athlete, because I feel like you're probably already a leader, just maybe a born leader, and you have a different type of motivation and mindset when it comes to just about anything. So I kind of understand how you guys maybe are kind of like the disruptors, and that you're willing to speak up and speak out and be loud. Were you always that way? I mean, as a child, or when were you always that way?
I wouldn't say always.
Mhm.
I think I'm more of a not a follower than I was a leader. I mean, my dad, it was a big mantra with my dad is don't follow the mob, don't follow the mob. And you can see it even as a young kid. I can remember third, fourth, fifth grade. You could see everybody want to go beat up Billy or something, or whatever it was, or Billy. And if you just said, I don't think this is a good idea, just to Ken's point a minute ago, then there's two or three other guys, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea either. And suddenly you're looked at as a leader when really all you're doing is not following. And I think that's a big distinction. Right? If you just don't follow that darn mob, one of my best lessons from my dad, don't follow that mob. So it came slowly. I'm sure there's leadership in it as I grew older. And, but for the most part, it was taking little steps to not follow makes you a leader.
Yeah. What about you, Ken? When did you discover your abilities?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things at work, and for me, but I think also athletes in general. I think you can't follow the peer, the herd, if you're
Mhm.
going to stand out, if you're going to achieve your
Yeah.
goals, because the average athlete is going to be average.
Hmm.
The great athlete is going to do things greatly to be great and to achieve greatness. At the same time, the sports culture, I think, also influences us to respect authority and to follow authority. So you kind of have this dichotomy about, well, you can't follow the crowd and be great because the crowd's going to be average. Even our teammates in middle school and high school, even in college. On the other hand, you've got this compliance to authority, the pressure. And I think a lot of athletes, there are those that stand out. We've seen some of those athletes over the last, 4 or 5 years. We've seen a lot of compliance as well. Because I think, if you might get cut, you might get blackballed. There is a fear, I think, the power of the leagues, the power of coaches that have the decision to cut you or to sit you on the bench or to play you. So I think you got a little bit of both. But growing up, to your answer, Kathy, I was a bit oppositional. I was a pretty tough teenager, and so I think that that's probably sticks with me still today.
Did you have to focus all your energy like into sports, and that's what did it for you?
Yeah, I have my parents, the oppositional tension between my parents. I thank them for my
Yeah.
career because I put a lot of energy into the weight room and into working out, and that was an area that I could be successful in, and so yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also good. I mean, sports to me, or, all of my kids, I had 5 kids, they had to be in something while in school, whether it was, at some extracurricular activity or sports, or just something to I would say keep them busy and keep them out of trouble, really was what I tried to focus on, just to, because you see a lot of kids nowadays, I think latchkey, if I can remember that term, where kids come home and they don't have anything to do after school, so they just get in trouble. And, finding something like sports to motivate them, I think is so important. And so I have a question for each of you, kind of out there. I'll start with Ken. If you didn't become an NFL football player, what would you be?
That's a good question. I was doing some real estate appraising in the off season, or in the summers between my last couple years in college, and had I not gotten that 5th year due to an injury, then I'd probably be. I grew up in Bakersfield, California. I'd probably be a real estate appraiser in Bakersfield, California.
That's good. And John, what would you be if you were an NBA superstar?
I don't know. I kind of put all my eggs in one basket there. I mean, I did get a degree in business. I figured I didn't have any specific goal in mind with that degree, just that it would be broad. I could find work at that point. So I was going to kind of run out that gambit, whether it was in the United States or in Europe, to try to play as long as I could. And fortunately, I was drafted, and the rest is, I guess, is history. But I wanted to actually get back to your last thing on sports and how important it is. It's think about the friends you have automatically. Think about that, how you have to fall into line, but also excel. How you have to carry your weight. So many of these things are being ruined. My dad used to say that moms are ruining sports. Moms are getting too much in the dugout, baseball reference, because they want little Billy to be able to play, even if he's not as good. And so now we have participation awards. We have,
I literally wrote that down. What do you think about participation ribbons? Yeah.
I mean, it's like a dagger every time I even hear it. I've had stories with my kids growing up where where moms have kind of forced it. It's not been pretty, but again, the lessons we can learn in sports prepare us for anything we're going to face in life, unless we water it down, which is what we're doing. And that's part of the reason I think why we're having all these problems. We have kids that don't believe in any authority. Their parents, their coaches, their teachers, their referees, anybody. They believe that it's all about them. They believe they don't have to excel to get what they want. They don't have to work hard to get what they want. I mean, these are just powerful lessons that you learn while getting all the friends and having all the fun. But it's hard work too. And so anyway, I wanted to get back to that.
No, that's great. I recently did a podcast with Dr. Larry Pilevsky, and he's a pediatrician. And I absolutely love Larry because he really looks at children and their behavior. And one thing that I think is so important, which is what wipes out participation ribbons, is we have to teach children while they're under our wings to be uncomfortable. And they might be uncomfortable losing or, not being picked first for the team or whatever that is. But we need to protect them while they're living under our wings and know that it's going to be okay. They will get through this. And that just prepares them to be better adults for when they do face rejection or they don't get picked for a job interview or something like that. They've got to be, have those feelings of being uncomfortable. And the same with the parent. the parent needs to be uncomfortable disciplining the child, knowing that in the long run, it's actually going to be helping that child. So, but yeah, I am.
Jordan Peterson has a great quote along that line right there, Cathy.
Mm-hmm.
He says that when you're raising your children, you have to have discipline. You have to teach them those lessons, because if you don't teach them, the world's going to teach them those lessons in a much less loving way.
Yes.
And you start thinking about it in those terms, we have a little bit of responsibility as parents, as coaches, as teachers like Ken is, to do those things so that the world doesn't punish them in an unfriendly way.
Right.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, I'm talking to different coaches at the high school level that have been in it for decades now. And John been coaching for a lot of years at all the levels, including college, coaching basketball. But, dealing with the parents is probably one of the bigger changes that we've, as coaches, especially at the high school level, have had to deal with. Varsity sports and it usually comes down to playing time or starting time, or maybe for somebody who's exceptional, are you promoting me for all league, all state, MVP, things like that. But I think one of the challenges too for parents, and it's a great lesson, it's a great opportunity to learn lessons. One of the things I've seen current high school athletes opt out of sports because they don't like the coach. Well, what don't you like about the coach? Well, he's too honest with me, or he doesn't make it fun enough, or we had a coaching change. Well, you know what? You're going to have bosses you don't like. You're going to have bosses that, you have boss, and then that boss left, another boss comes in and you don't like that. And now you can't quit, right? And so high school sports is such a great, especially varsity, is such a great opportunity to prepare you for, which is the original intent, is to prepare you for adulthood. And adulthood is, it cracks me up too, but all of a sudden it's not something we look forward to. Our young people look forward to becoming an adult and freedom and taking responsibility, which is part of that. Now it's become this verb, adulting, where I can kind of do it if I have to when I choose to, but then I can put it on the shelf and kind of still be a kid. And it's like, wow, it's kind of gone sideways a little bit. But I think sports, it's interesting too. Like, one of the things I look at when I go to, like, say, a basketball game, is fun for me. I love watching warm-ups and I like watching the game. Is the kid, when the kid's on the court playing, are they playing? Are they all in, focused and with effort? Or are they looking over to the sidelines to the coach all the time? Or are they looking up into the stands to their parents? It's like, go have fun, go compete, go be the best you can be on that court. Enjoy the sport, learn from the sport, mature in the sport.
Yeah. No, sports are such a great thing. I was going back to parents. So I have grandkids that are in sports now, so I get to go watch those. And I'll be honest with you, I think that they should have glass so that the parents have to be on this side of the glass and the kids and the referees can't even hear the parents, because some of those parents go ballistic over the ref or something. And I just think, if you have, number one, the ref can call give me your input on this. I think whether you agree with the ref or not, you still respect the ref's decision, only because he is in that position and you are not the parent in that position. Maybe you didn't see something, maybe you did see something, but out of respect for the game and for everybody else, don't throw a fit. I mean, to the extent where the parents are getting kicked out of the court or something like that. So what's your intake on that? I just think parents need to respect the referees.
Well, I think you're right in that, the nice thing about high school football and a lot of football stadiums is you have a track around the field.
Yeah.
So it further separates the parents and the fans from the refs and the coaches, and mostly from the field. But man, basketball.
Yeah.
I don't know, John, you can speak to that. Basketball, you're like right on top of it.
You're right there. Yeah.
I've seen some ugly things with officials and parents, and I've seen parents stand on the end lines and literally intimidate officials from start to finish. And it's ugly. It's not. I've had referees tell me, look, we have to do this because I'm going to get chased out into the parking lot after the game. And you sit there and it's funny. What's funny is before you coach an AAU, for example, you have to take the myriad of tests to show that you're not a nut. You have to turn over your record. Like you have to give them access to your police record if you have one, so they can investigate you to make sure you're all on the up and up. And so you go to these tournaments and you are the model citizen apparently because you pass these tests. And then you look at all this lunacy going on from the stands, from other coaches, and you go, what are we doing here, folks? I mean, it's way out of line. And unfortunately, I don't have any great answers for it. I'd say, when adults are dealing with adults, it's a little bit different. If you're like Ken and I have both played professionally, referees are often younger than us in our case. And so you're talking to them adult to adult. That's way different than when you've got a 14-year-old kid reffing your game and you're standing over him and you're going, hey, you got to do this. I mean, now you're intimidating the kid. And I think it takes unique people to understand that, how you speak to an adult and how kids always should speak to refs. Always, without exception.
Right.
And I think other adults, leaders, have a chance to model those behaviors and maybe even give a little bit like hey, come on now, this is a little out of balance, something friendly. There's a high school that, when I was coaching here in Oregon, there was a high school we played against, Marist High School, Catholic high school, which I just love, Catholic sports teams. They're so focused on effort and energy and excellence. Anyway, they had what they called culture keepers, and mostly in volleyball and basketball, in the gym. And these culture keepers were, leaders that were adults, parents, and they would carry a bag of Tootsie Pops with them. And it was part of the norm of the culture. And if a parent got a little too frustrated and kind of voiced, some negative, they would walk up to the parent that was, out of bounds, and they'd hand them a Tootsie Pop.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I know, right? And it was kind of a very subtle and respectful way of saying,
hey,
put a pop in it, would you?
It's like the cone of shame.
Exactly, without being too obvious, but everybody kind of knew it. And if you got, but it was but it has to be a cultural norm, right, for that to work. So
no, I'm just going through my brain. I was like, okay, the next game I go to, I'm just gonna stop and get a bunch of like lollipops or something. And when some parents acting up, I'm just going to go give them a sucker or something just to do something. No, I am not that parent, by the way. So I'm not going to say my husband wasn't, but I am not that kind of a parent. So no. So you guys, I want to know, is there anything else? Like, what do you really want to tell the world about medical freedom, bodily autonomy? If you're doing it through your podcast, but what is your hope? And do you see hope that we're not going to have another COVID fiasco?
Well, I guess I'll start because Ken's smarter and can finish afterwards. But like I heard in Singapore, for example, they're set up to where you can never, everything's mandated. You have to do it, and there are no exceptions. You kind of go, wow. How close are we to that? And I noticed United Airlines, several airlines are now demanding these permanent IDs where you have, it's the enhanced driver's license or you can't fly. The wheels of taking away our freedoms are continuing to grind, and they're not letting up. Even as all this COVID nonsense is being disclosed and brought to light, they're not letting up. And what we've discovered through our podcast and our efforts with Voices for Medical Freedom and now the Ultimate Assist is that this is really about freedom. The whole thing is just about nobody has the right to put something in your body you don't want, period. You get a say in that forever. And if they challenge you on that, I mean, it's protected by our laws. It's protected by our Constitution. I guess my message is don't just stick your head in the sand and do what people ask. Use my dad's advice. Don't follow the mob. Don't follow the herd. And understand that you have the right to speak. You have the right to breathe. You have the right to not put things in your body, and nobody can intrude on those. So I guess Ken mentioned earlier too, and to speak up for that.
Right.
Don't self-censor. Be confident to say, no, that's not happening here, folks, and then see what they do. We've tested our hand. We've stood up for it. Now let's test yours. Are you willing to commit your job, your future? I mean, you can go to jail for forcing people to do drugs, for forcing people to take poison. I mean, this is a terrible, terrible thing. Are you willing to stand up for that, sir or ma'am, as you're forcing this down my throat? Because I may go to jail, but I live with that. Can you go to jail forcing this on me? So I'm a little combative there, but it's come a long ways in the last 4 years.
That's good. I think people are actually speaking up. And a thing on the real ID that you mentioned, you can fly with a passport.
Right.
So for those of you out there, they started it in May where you have to have the real ID to fly. But if you have a passport, you can use that as identification.
For now.
For now.
And
yeah,
again,
for now.
What if they say your passport, I mean, because that's all they do. They just change the rule. Oh, your passport's no longer good, or you have to have an enhanced passport. Where does that line end? And if you stop at this one and say, no, I'm going to do the enhanced, it's just easy, and then you're going to have the next fight later on. So you get to pick your poison, I guess.
Right. And Ken?
Yeah, I mean, John said it so well, and so, in so many different areas that are so important, I think. And what comes to mind is, I know, like when you take a hunter safety course, one of the things, or a gun safety course to get your license to conceal carry. One of the things that stood out to me when they do those courses is if you're going to take on the responsibility, to conceal carry, then you have to have committed in your mind, following through with your training, and we've just been through training under COVID and an awakening. And I would say, let's be prepared to follow through. Let's do it in our mind now and make that commitment in our mind now to stand up with courage for our rights, for our beliefs. And so when that time comes, the fear of the consequences will be so diminished because we have already done it in our mind. And I think that's part of athletics, right? Is you do these rehearsals of, I mean, I was just an offensive lineman, so I didn't have a whole lot. It wasn't like I was having a last second 3-point shot, like John had. But, I can't imagine all the rehearsals he's done in his mind, or that free throw shot that was going to win the game. I would guess, I don't know, John, did you? I mean, yeah, we all did some rehearsals in our minds as athletes. So, do that rehearsal, make that decision in your mind so that when it comes time and the price and the cost is high and real, you've already made that decision, and it's a lot easier to follow through.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great.
It really
advice.
is.
That is. Well, guys, I appreciate your time so much. I will make sure that we have a link to the Ultimate Assist, which is your outstanding podcast that you promote the medical freedom and awareness to everybody. And I wish you all the best, because I know that you guys are heroes in the sports, and you are heroes for so many people for medical freedom. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Cathy.
Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you.